A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, we are going to review the week. Some of the issues we'll be looking at: demonstrations over power cuts. In Lira and in Kampala, there are demonstrations. In Kampala, there were two, one in Katu and another one around Chibuye. Power was reinstated shortly thereafter, setting up potentially a trend that when you demonstrate, you get power. We don't know whether it is that. We'll talk about the former Vice President, Professor Gilbert Bukenya, bouncing back in a lowly attended poll in his North Busiro constituency. The oil probe in Parliament. Amama Mbabazi, the Prime Minister, appeared before the oil probe committee and dismissed all allegations made against him. His appearance did not came with a lot of drama about the way he was treating the legislators, asking them questions in return. He was there to answer questions. He ended up asking many of those questions. We'll talk about the World AIDS Day, which was commemorated worldwide yesterday. At a certain stage, Uganda was hailed as a victor in the fight against AIDS. Right now, the figures seem to have stagnated. These and other issues will form the core of our discussions tonight as we review the week. Our guests on Spectrum: Honorable Roland Kaginda Mugume, Shadow Minister for Public Service, also Member of Parliament for Rukingiri Municipality. You're most welcome, Honorable Kaginda.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers.
Because we are also on the internet, you can watch Spectrum videos of you. We're also joined by Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, also a social and political commentator. He's not been with us for quite some time. He's now back. You're most welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Edmond, and good evening to all the listeners and the viewers.
We're also joined by Dr. Bainomugisha, Director of Research and Manager for Peace and Democracy Program at ACODE. That's a research group and think tank. You're most welcome, Dr. Bainomugisha.
Yes, good evening, viewers and listeners.
Well, let's look at the demonstrations. This week, many Ugandans took to the streets, as I said, in Lira and in Kampala, protesting against the acute power shortages and alleged mismanagement by Umeme. Government has said they had promised that the Bujagali power dam would be operational by November. Earlier on, they had said October, then November. It's not yet happened. Dr. Bainomugisha, how do you read this? What do you think is going to give an answer to these power shortages?
Thank you, Edmond. I think the power crisis is a serious concern. It's not only an economic issue, it is a security issue in this country. And as you realize, most traders have lost business. But even us, the common people, it has become very, very erratic to the extent that we are in the capital city, but we seem to be actually in the rural areas. So I think government must come up on this and respond and treat the electricity issue as a security matter, as an economic matter. There is no way how you can be talking about transformation of the economy and there is no energy to power that economy. And of course, we are promised that the dam at Karuma, Bujagali, will generate enough power by this time, but it seems like these are just political statements. They are not backed by empirical information. I think there is a mismatch between the technical people and the politicians. And of course, you know that the former Minister of Energy, now the Minister of Internal Affairs, came up to say that the President actually was told lies. So we seem, I think darkness is likely to be a common phenomenon in this country. And of course, as darkness deepens in this country, then the economy will continue to dive. And of course, this is likely to cause discontent and disharmony and disaffection among the population. So I think that the government needs to come up and seriously tackle the issue of electricity, perhaps even review the whole question about privatization. I think that the sector is not a sector to be trusted with the private sector, because the private sector doesn't look at how strategic this sector is. So for me, really, I would support the proposal made recently by General Salim Saleh, that I think it is high time that the energy sector is put back into the hands of the government.
All right. There's a time the president has been saying that the opposition blocked plans to have Bujagali in the first place. Is that a legitimate explanation of this crisis?
In my view, of course, first, it is the responsibility of government to provide goods and services to the people, because you've been entrusted. So the president is the chief executive. So whatever happens, I think it is wrong for him to choose the opposition for failure to provide power to the population. In any case, we've seen the president take even some of the most some of the actually policies he has had a leeway to make decisions that actually even when have turned out to be negative. So I think he had the capacity, he had the leeway to make to take even a decision at that time if it was genuine. But it is, again, you know that after some time, then it was proved that the opposition or people who actually against the construction of the dam at Rukingiri were correct. Because soon it was found that actually the Nile independent power actually was the deal with Nile independent power was a bad deal. So I think in that case the opposition and all people who were opposed were right. So now I think he needs to take responsibility, political responsibility, and give us power. For us citizens now, we demand power from the government that is in power and not from the opposition, because they don't have that mandate.
Honorable Kaginda, what do you think the government should do, really?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, as a government of the Republic of Uganda, when there is a problem, we need to sit as a country and we consult each and everybody, because every citizen in this country is a stakeholder. That's why myself, I'm not happy with what is taking place on the issue of Mugume, of electricity. Like as you have said, we have seen many areas, Entebbe, Lira, Kampala, today it was Masaka. These people are demonstrating because of shortage of power. And I think they have a reason, because the leaders who are supposed to tell these people what is happening, they have not, they are quiet. So the public think there is no problem. If, for example, you are a person from the opposition and you say this is a problem, the approach is militaristic, and which I think it is wrong. So as of course, me, I'm a member of parliament, and I think who is on opposition. But my advice to the government, as my colleague has said, is now to, whenever we want to sign an agreement with all these private companies, we need first of all to research where is this company coming from. It is very, very important. Otherwise, to me, it looks as if some of these companies which we are which are operating here, like Mugume, I don't know. We need to know why. Why is it? Whenever there is a problem, like for example, in this country, as parliament, we are talking about problems facing energy ministry.
Yes.
We are asking, how did these people come? That's what we are asking as parliament. And we are asking all these questions. That's why there is red shading. Actually, one time in parliament,
talking about
even red shaded. So you asking yourself, that was the time we are debating on the issue of power.
You are saying bad things about power, so power ran away from
Yes! Really, some of these things really. I agree with our Ugandans who are saying that at least in this country, what we need now, we need, whenever we have a serious issue like this, we have power. There's power for sure in this country. When you don't have power, you can't do much. And when you see these people who are demonstrating in these areas, these are towns where people have fabrications and each and everything. They are using power. We have referral hospitals. We have everything. So without power, really, you can't do much. So the approach the government is using is not good. Everybody should come out. Now that there is a power crisis, we need to come out and see what is the problem. Is it in Mugume? If it is in Mugume, what can we do as Ugandans? I think the consultations should be everywhere now. Everybody should be consulted. But after all, we are telling the government that there is a problem. The government is not listening. And to me, right now, I don't know what we can do to solve this problem. But if the Mujagari power if the project is almost done, I think this is the way to go. But we are not sure. Because me myself having to go there, but maybe I will try and I will go there and see. But otherwise, the government is talking of well-worth, but I can assure you, well-worth, it is very near, maybe 3 or 4 months.
Well, they said by Christmas.
By Christmas. So we need the minister really to come out and tell us and explain these issues. Because these are the people who are in these ministries full time. They should come out and tell you, especially when there is a crisis. Yesterday, I was in a workshop somewhere. I told the people who were there, who were attending the workshop, that the Access to Information Act of 2005 requests all the ministers to report, to tell the public whenever there is a problem.
Yes.
So that people should know what is happening in this country. This is our country.
Yes.
But they don't hold the information, and the law is clear about the information which the public should get. So this is all about, and I don't know, maybe by the end of this discussion we shall agree the way forward.
All right.
Thank you.
Nicholas Opiyo, tell us what you think the permanent solution should be.
Well, Edmond, I think that Ugandans are a very interesting lot. You know, we are used to breaking news. If news breaks, we jump onto it, talk so much, and in the next 2 weeks it will be no more news. So I think we've got to look beyond this sensationalism, beyond this breaking news phenomenon, and begin to look at the bigger picture. And only then shall we find a solution for the problems that our country is having currently. Not just in the poor sector, it's across the sector,
right.
I mean across the spectrum.
Right.
So I do think, in my view, that if you look back in the last 5 months of this term of the NRM government, it's been a time of managing crisis. It's been a time of conflict after another, a crisis after another. And that, to me, I think, speaks to a much bigger problem than just the bulbs going off. I do think that there is a bigger problem of governance, a bigger problem of the management of this country. The question I think we should begin to ask ourselves is that, is the NRM government capable now as it is to run this country?
They've just won an election.
Can they? Winning elections is one thing, managing and running a country is another. The question is, as they are now, with the Prime Minister like Amama Mbabazi, can they manage this country? The results in the last 5 months, to me, has pointed out that there is going to be a rolling crisis if we continue down the same path. It might be power today, it will be roads tomorrow, it might be hospitals the next day. So I think we need to address the bigger governance question. And I think that governance question is a question of governance that is all-inclusive, governance that takes into account the views of other people. Because I do think that the first 5 months of Roland Mbabazi as Prime Minister has been a very militant and dismissive tenure. We do not see an initiative to build consensus, to discuss, to find a common solution. The Prime Minister in the past was Sibambi. He was a consensus builder. Even if there was a crisis, that crisis would be managed properly. So I do think that we need to begin to change the way this country is being run, especially given our experience in the last 5 months. But also, more importantly, I think having heard the shadow minister speak, I didn't hear an opposition position. I didn't hear an alternative. And I do think that that is doing this country a disservice. The NRM government might have been messing up, but what is the opposition bringing on the table to solve this problem? Are we all going to fold our hands and wait for Jagala to be switched on? I don't think so. Because if you had the statement of Minister Onek, he says, Bujagali may not actually produce the amount of megawatts it is said that it will produce. So it may not actually solve our problem. So I would be interested in hearing that the opposition has an alternative plan. What are they saying? If they were in government today, what policy alternatives would they have? And I think if we do that, long term, we shall solve the problem of moving from one crisis to another, from one crisis to another.
Right. Well, that's
so it's a governance issue for me, really.
That's interesting. You spoke about maybe it will be doctors next. Doctors have been on strike. In Munago, we've had strikes by teachers in the past. We don't know whether it's gone. Maybe it won't happen in the future, but it's something that has happened to us in the past. Let's talk about something else. The vice president, former vice president, has just come back in an election which was lowly attended. Do you think, some people think this is a comeback for him? How high can he jump?
I think, with all respect, of course, to the former vice president.
When someone begins a statement with all due respect,
I know exactly.
No, I have respect as a former leader.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, even if actually he was in jail, just like Badbo, he's respected by the current president. But the point is, what makes me sad about the comeback of the president? Two things. One is the former vice president, Honorable Kenya now, is the whole question. I think the fault in the electoral laws, that someone was convicted by the court and found actually was found guilty and actually his election nullified. A few weeks later, he's a candidate, and now he's in Parliament. What does that mean to the democracy in this country? And I think this is where we need electoral reform, so that if he was found guilty and punished by throwing him out, I think yes, he committed an offense. So where is punishment? What lesson? What has changed about his conduct, about his character, and what lessons to the young people and the future generation and the court of our democracy? I think he should have been punished. And of course, I propose either 5 years out of electoral.
Suspended for 5
years. Yes. And then he comes back after like 5 years, because we must punish sin. That is one. The second, of course, point is about the turnout, the voter turnout that you saw is a pointer in the voter apathy, that people are losing interest in the whole electoral process. And of course, that's a threat to democracy, because you see, democracy essentially means that actually people are sovereign, that power resides among the people, and leaders get power from the people. So the people, the majority of the people have stayed home. So a few people have elected him. So how much power, how legitimate is he as a leader of his constituency?
With such a low turnout.
Yes. So consequently, if we continue to get this kind of thing, that people cheat at elections and they are allowed to come back without punishment, and the voter turnout is reducing, and there's that voter apathy, democracy will die. And any student of democracy, any love of democracy and peace and prosperity must be concerned that actually this is very bad for our country.
Do you think if we should have a threshold of voter turnout? If it's below 20% or whatever percentage, it's not a valid vote?
I think, and actually Nicholas and I are working on this project. I think we need to be interested, and I must assure you that we've not looked in that respect. But you raise an important point, because what is the threshold of voter turnout? Really, if the threshold is like below 30%, but we can do actually an empirical study and make comparative analysis in other areas, because if actually you have below than 30%, then you are illegitimate and therefore cannot represent the people. So it means that those people actually that stay home, they have no leader. But what does that mean? So that's why I think
that's 70%. If the turnout is 30%,
the 70%, you don't represent them, and therefore are not legitimate. And that has to do with the whole question of rule of law in this country. I think people have lost interest in the rule of law. They don't trust the courts. They don't trust our laws. They don't trust, some people have chosen to take the law in their hands. So if you see a lot of criminality and lawlessness increasing, it's because people have lost trust and confidence in the justice system. We must rebuild trust and confidence in the justice system, in the electoral laws, in the actually rule of law, and then for in doing that, then we will be actually on the path to democratic consolidation in this country. But if we don't, then I think democracy is on its way to its death. and of course it's absurd.
You say some of the symptoms you mentioned are people losing interest in the rule of law, people mob justice, people taking the law in their own hands,
and of course
people beating up police.
Exactly, and of course and this is very empirical. If you look at the way the primaries, even in the party primaries during the NRM, the quality of elections in the primaries, the kind of violence, the kind of voter rigging, money being splashed openly. You remember and of course it was not. So that kind of thing, it is absurd. And of course, when you talk to people, even in the NRM party, of course also in the opposition, because now it's a whole nation problem. And so if we are committed to building an enduring democracy, seriously, we must go back to the rule of law, and this must apply to every Ugandan. And so, for me, I get worried when a person like a former vice president really comes back under these kinds of circumstances.
Nicholas, let's pick out those 2 points. Do you agree that someone should be suspended when they are convicted? And secondly, do you think we should have a threshold?
I think allowing people who have been found guilty of committing electoral offences to contest the same seat that they stole is a mockery of our democratic process. It's an abuse to our people. For me, I think that is the biggest weakness so far in the electoral laws, and it needs to be addressed. But I think Bukenya as a person has reached a political menopause. I do not think that he's picked.
He can't give back
he has
children
picked.
anymore.
Bukenya's only goal now is survival and remaining relevant. He's remaining afloat. And I think the only thing that he can do is do that by having a political base. I mean, however shallow it is, even if he's voted by about 10,000 people in a place that has about 100,000 voters, he has to remain relevant.
Right.
Bukenya has picked.
He's
not going to go any higher. Forget it. Because socially, politically, I think Bukenya is finished. He's had so much to do, and he's done all he could do. He's not going to be any relevant to this country. But he's a manifestation of a bigger problem that Doctor has pointed out. He's a product of a flawed electoral process. Because a candidate found to have committed electoral offences, stolen election, bribed voters, found by the courts, is not tried in the criminal case. He's allowed to go scot-free. He's committed a crime. The court have found him guilty. He then is allowed to contest the same seat and use the same method to win elections. That is the biggest travesty of justice and a mockery of our democratic process.
Honorable Kaginda, before we go for the break.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that this question is clear. First of all, in opposition, before the elections to this year, we are on the streets telling every Ugandan that we still have poor laws governing our elections.
The Black Book proposal was rejected.
Exactly. we tried, but of course, as you know, the problems we have, we continued with our electoral.
Maybe the book should have been yellow. Maybe.
So, of course, I agree with my colleagues that really, if somebody is convicted, he should not come back because really he's the same person. But according to the question, whether former vice president is
you think he'll come back
for the top position, I don't. First of all, it is interesting. When he went back, he changed the sign.
The sign has changed.
Yeah, the sign. This is very, very important.
He wasn't doing it
for Ugandans. This is a person who has been a vice president for this country.
Right.
For I think
8 years.
No, for 8 years.
Yes.
And somebody who has been a vice president using the same sign of the ruling government, now he has changed all of a sudden.
The UPM one.
The former one.
In 1980.
Exactly. Secondly, I understand he has even refused some members within the ruling to go and campaign for him.
Oh, really?
So to me, I think it is a sign that is changing from where he was to maybe to the
FDC?
I don't know. I'm not talking about FDC because if he is to come to FDC, we can talk. We don't have for us. We are Ugandans. But I think he's coming up with something else.
Right.
Changing a sign of his caliber is something which we can't underrate as a position in this country.
I think
So, very quickly before we go for the
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to make a statement of fact. I think Nicholas has pointed to an important thing, that of course Kenya has reached the zenith of his rise.
Reached
And he can-
menopause.
Yes, so he can either now
You don't think he can reinvent himself?
Yeah, no, it's impossible. But I think it also points to one other thing that I would want Ugandans to know, that I think politicians and my friend here Mugume must prepare to live out of office, out of politics when time comes. And I think we see a crisis of most people, they are not ready to survive out of government offices. And I think the soon we win our people, or people prepare for that, is important, because Honorable Kenya, he could have given this country some level, he could have established a president, even if he retired and then he's reconstructed like in civil society as an elder statesman, rather than struggling
To stay in politics.
That's
We have to go. Yeah,
okay. Briefly. But now that the people, this is a democracy. They are serious.
brought him back.
Yeah, exactly. They have brought him back.
You should
But
see
to me, as I've said, he's back as a different person.
All right.
Not the one we knew, because he has changed the many things.
Right, we'll go for a break. This is
So this
Spectrum
may be-
on Radio 1.
Yeah,
Just stay tuned. We'll be back. We'll be
John, Mike and I will go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts